My daughter, my only child, Emily, looked me right in the eye and called me a burden. She didn't yell it. She didn't say it in the heat of a fight. She said it calmly, with the same casual air she'd used to point out a scuff on her shoe. Her exact words. She said she was just waiting for me to die so she could get her inheritance. A lifetime of love and scraped knees and bedtime stories, all boiled down to a number in her financial forecast. She thought she was planning my future, getting ready to shuffle me off to some beige room that smelled of bleach and regret. She had no idea I was about to plan my own funeral. So I decided to give her what she wanted, sort of. I spent every last penny of that so-called inheritance on my own fake funeral, and I live-streamed it to make sure she didn't miss the show. Of course, it didn't start with that one word. Rot doesn't happen overnight. It's a quiet decay that you try to ignore until the whole thing is ready to collapse. For years, I told myself I was just imagining it. This wasn't the Emily I knew, the little girl who made me friendship bracelets from dandelions and insisted I wear them to board meetings. That Emily was full of light. This new Emily, the one who showed up at her late 20s, was different. She was hollowed out and filled with something cold and transactional. Her mother, my Sarah, passed away when Emily was just starting college. It was sudden, an aneurysm that took her from us in a single, silent moment. I was shattered, but my focus, every bit of it, was on Emily. I had to be both father and mother, the rock she needed to finish her degree and find her place in a world that had suddenly turned cruel. I paid for all 4 years of her marketing degree. When she graduated, I gave her the down payment for her first condo. I thought I was giving her a foundation. I now realize I was just laying the first bricks in a fortress of entitlement. The first real crack appeared about 5 years ago. She'd met David, her now husband, a man who measures a person's worth in stock prices and square footage. I remember the first time he came to my house for dinner. The house I built with Sarah, where Emily grew up. It's not a mansion, but it's filled with memories. David walked through the living room, running his hand along the oak bookcase I'd spent a month building. "Good bones," he said, not to me, but to Emily. "We could open this whole wall up, get some real light in here." He spoke as if I were already a ghost, a fixture to be renovated out of existence. Emily didn't correct him. She just smiled and squeezed his arm. "I know, right? The potential is amazing." From then on, their visits felt like thinly veiled appraisals. They weren't checking on me. They were checking on their investment. Conversations would drift to property taxes, the value of the land, how much a developer might pay. "You know, Dad," Emily said one afternoon, sipping wine on the porch Sarah and I built, "maintaining a place this big, it's a lot for a man your age." I was 60 at the time, still playing tennis twice a week. "I'm managing just fine, sweetheart," I said, forcing a smile. But she wasn't listening. She was just looking at the garden, her eyes calculating the cost of landscaping. Then came the loans. A few $100s because her credit card was acting up. $1,000 for car repair. She'd call, her voice syrupy with an affection I hadn't heard in months. "Oh, Daddy, you're a lifesaver. I'll pay you back on Friday." Friday never came. The amounts grew. $5,000 for a can't-miss investment David had. $10,000 for a trip to Europe because they just needed to get away. I kept a little black book just to track my finances. Soon, the numbers looked less like fatherly support and more like the systematic draining of a resource. The total was nearing 6 figures, and not once did she mention paying me back after the money was in her account. The turning point was my 65th birthday. I'd had a minor health scare, a bout of pneumonia that put me in the hospital for a couple of days. Emily sent a text. No visit. When I got home, she called, her voice strained with impatience. "You really need to be more careful, Dad. We were worried." It didn't sound like worry. It sounded like I had inconvenienced her schedule. For my birthday, I told her I just want a quiet dinner, just the 3 of us. She agreed, but they showed up with brochures. Thick, glossy brochures for places named Golden Meadows and Serenity Gardens. Assisted living facilities. "We just think it's time to be practical," Emily said, pushing a brochure across the table next to my lasagna. "You had that scare. You're not getting any younger. We wouldn't have to worry about you all the time." David chimed in, smooth and rehearsed. "It would free you up. No more lawn to mow, no more leaky faucets. We could handle the house. It's too much for you." They had practiced this. They saw me not as a person, but as a problem to be managed. The lasagna turned to ash in my mouth. I pushed the brochures back. "I'm not going to a home, Emily. This is my home." Her face tightened. The mask of concern slipped. Don't be so stubborn, Dad. It's a huge weight on our minds. We have our own lives to build. I can't be your caretaker forever. I never asked you to be, I said quietly. And that's when she said it. She sighed a long, theatrical huff. You don't have to ask. You just are. You're becoming a burden. Burden, not a father. A piece of luggage that had become too heavy. David just sat there nodding. In that moment, I saw the future they had planned. They'd visit once a month in that home, bring a potted plant, and stay just long enough to feel good about themselves. They weren't just waiting for me to get older. They were waiting for me to die, and they were getting impatient. The love I had for her, that vast, unconditional ocean, didn't vanish that night. But it receded, and on the shoreline, something hard and sharp was revealed, the truth. My daughter saw me as an obstacle. Her love was conditional, and the condition was my eventual and preferably swift death. Underneath all the hurt, a strange feeling began to bloom. It was cold, clear, and sharp. It was resolve. If my value to her was purely financial, then I'd use that currency to teach her a lesson in value. The idea crept in slowly, and then all at once. I was sitting in my study, looking at a photo of the three of us at Disneyland when Emily was 7, perched on my shoulders with a face full of pure joy. Where did that little girl go? The thought was an agony. I looked around the room at the life Sarah and I had built, at the things my daughter was so eager to sell. And then it hit me. Liquidation. That was the key. She wanted me to disappear. She wanted the money. I would give her both. The next morning, I called my lawyer, Arthur. He's an old-school gentleman who'd been my friend and legal counsel for 30 years. I sat in his office and laid it all out. The burden comment, the brochures, everything. I saw a flash of grim understanding in his eyes. What are you proposing, James? He asked. I want to liquidate everything, I said. The house, the stocks, the bonds. Everything Emily is expecting. Arthur raised an eyebrow. And then what? A trip around the world? Something like that, I replied. I'm planning a funeral. My funeral. He stared at me for a full 10 seconds. I thought he was going to tell me I was insane. Instead, he took a deep breath. James, this is a bell you can't unring. Faking a death can spiral into real fraud very quickly. We have to be meticulous. As your friend, I think it's a terrible idea. But as your lawyer, he paused, I can advise you on how to legally spend all of your own money while you are very much alive. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything, I told him. She doesn't want me. She wants what I have. So I'm going to spend what I have to show her what she's truly lost. We spent the next month in a whirlwind of legal and financial activity. Arthur was a master. He helped me liquidate my portfolio and sell the house in a private, all-cash deal. The house I built, the garden Sarah planted, all of it was converted into a number in a new bank account Emily knew nothing about. It was both heartbreaking and liberating. I booked a one-way ticket to see the world, and I made significant donations to charities that supported abandoned seniors. I saved just enough for the final performance. For that, I needed a showman. Arthur knew a guy, Julian, a funeral director who looked more like a theater director, with a flair for the dramatic and a deep appreciation for irony. While I explained the plan, he didn't flinch. He clapped his hands. A performance piece, he declared. A statement on ingratitude. It's divine. Julian became my creative director. We planned an event. The budget was, as he put it, tastefully extravagant. We booked the grandest hall at his funeral home. We ordered truckloads of white lilies and roses. We hired a string quartet, but the masterstroke was the guest list. We hired 24 professional actors to play my dearest friends, a beloved mentor, an old college professor, the kindly neighbor. One talented actress was cast as my secret love, a heartbroken companion for my final years, just to add a little drama. The final piece was the broadcast. We hired a small video crew to film the service. It would be a private, password-protected live stream. Arthur's office would send an email to Emily and David, formally notifying them of my sudden passing, with a link to the stream for the bereaved next of kin who may be too distraught to attend in person. We knew she wouldn't come. Clicking a link is easy. I would be in a control room upstairs with Julian, watching the whole thing unfold on a monitor. My own funeral, viewed from the wings. The stage was set. The trap was laid. The day of my funeral was bright and clear. I woke up in a hotel across town, feeling a mix of dread and exhilaration. By noon, I was hidden away in the control room above Julian's funeral hall. One large screen showed the hall below, the closed casket, the mountains of flowers, the string quartet softly playing somber classical music. At exactly 2 p.m., Arthur sent the email. The minutes stretched out. My heart was pounding. Where she didn't click it. Then, at 2:11 p.m., the stream went live on our end, indicating a viewer had logged in. I could only imagine the scene. Emily in her pristine living room, sitting on her white sofa, probably looking perfect, as if heading to a business meeting, not mourning her father. The live stream began with a slow pan across the mourners, their faces a perfect picture of grief. The service started. The first actor, playing Professor Albright, my supposed mentor, took the podium. James was a light. He began, his voice thick with emotion. A brilliant mind and a profoundly generous soul. I pictured Emily's face, a small frown creasing her brow as she whispered to David, "I don't know who that is." Next came the heartbroken secret love, a beautiful, elegant woman named Eleanor. She spoke of quiet dinners and my hidden passion for life. She wept, actual tears rolling down her cheeks. I could just imagine Emily's jaw tightening. A secret lover? That meant a potential rival for the estate. Her whispers would have been sharp, angry. The idea of losing a single dollar would cause her more distress than losing her father. The peak of the performance was my own eulogy, read by Arthur. He stood at the podium, his face a mask of sorrowful dignity. "My dear friend James asked me to share these words," he began. He spoke of my love for Sarah and the joy Emily brought me. He read a story about a disastrous camping trip from her childhood. I hoped, for just a second, a real memory might cross her face. Arthur's voice then dropped. In his final years, James felt a profound sense of dislocation. He often said he felt like a ship whose anchor had been cut. He worried about being a burden to those he loved. I could feel her flinching at that word, miles away. She had to know what it was for her. Arthur paused. But James was no one's burden. He was a pillar, and he wanted his final farewell to be not a source of sorrow, but a final gift. A celebration of a life lived to the fullest, paid for by the fruits of his own labor. I imagined David leaning in, a look of dawning horror on his face. Paid for by? This was the moment. Arthur took a deep breath. And so, in accordance with James's final, specific instructions, I am here to make an announcement. James believed that an inheritance is not a right, but a gift to be earned through love and respect. In the absence of these, he felt the inheritance itself was meaningless. Arthur looked directly into the camera as if he could see right through it to my daughter. Therefore, he liquidated his entire estate before he left on a long trip. He spent it. He donated it. He lived on it. And he saved just enough to fund this beautiful service. This floral arrangement, a fraction of your trip to Bali. The string quartet, a tiny piece of David's new sports car. This magnificent, empty casket, that's the down payment on your new house you'll never have. He wanted you to have your inheritance, Emily. You're looking at the very last of it. There is nothing left. The silence in the control room was absolute. Then, I gave the signal for the final act. The reveal. Arthur cleared his throat. James had one last message he wanted to share with you. Personally, on the main screen, the feed from the funeral hall dissolved. It was replaced by a live shot of me, sitting in a simple chair. I looked directly into the camera. "Hello, Emily," I said. I can only imagine the shock on her face, seeing a ghost speaking to her through a laptop. "You call me a burden, Emily," I said, my voice calm and even. "You made it clear my only remaining value to you was my death. So I decided to give you the experience you seem to want so desperately. I hope you enjoyed the show. It's everything you'll ever get from me." I continued. "You see, an inheritance isn't just money. It's the last chapter of a story between a parent and a child. But you didn't want the story, Emily. You just wanted to rip out the last page because you thought a check was attached. So I decided to rewrite the ending. I let that sink in. The money is gone. I spent it all creating this one, perfect, unforgettable memory for you. Every time you think about the life of leisure you'll never afford, I want you to remember this day. I want you to remember what you threw away. It wasn't money. It was a father. As for the house, I added, the one you were so eager to flip, it was sold a month ago. The new owners take possession on Monday. I'd suggest you collect your things." I simply looked at her through the lens, my face filled only with a profound and bottomless disappointment. Then I nodded to the technician. The screen went black. The aftermath was exactly what I expected. The angry, screaming voicemails came first. Then the pleading texts. then the threats from a lawyer. Emily tried to sue for emotional distress. Arthur calmly informed her lawyer that while the stunt was unorthodox, it was perfectly legal for a man to spend his own money. He also mentioned that should this go to court, he had a number of recordings of her less-than-grieving phone calls and would be happy to present them as evidence. The case was quietly dropped. The story got out, leaked by an anonymous attendee. Some people call me a cruel old man, but many more call me a legend. I got emails from parents all over the world who felt unseen, unappreciated, and reduced to being a future inheritance. They understood. A handwritten letter finally arrived at Arthur's office. It was full of apologies and pleas for forgiveness. But the words felt hollow. It was the performance of a daughter who finally realized her father was worth more to her alive and broke than dead and wealthy. Too little too late. The curtain had already fallen. I didn't keep the money. After paying for my funeral and my travels, I donated the rest to a charity that supports elderly people abandoned by their families. Her inheritance went to all the people she thought I should be with. I live in a small coastal town now. I have a little apartment with an ocean view. I spend my days walking on the beach and volunteering at the library. I'm at peace. I didn't really lose a daughter in all this. I just finally accepted that I'd lost her years ago. I held a funeral for the idea of the daughter I once had, and in doing so, I resurrected myself. She called me a burden, but the only burden was the weight of her expectation that I would tolerate her disrespect. I refused to be a footnote in my own story. So I bought my freedom, and the price was a funeral she will never forget. Revenge is a dish best served cold, they say, but sometimes it's best served live, with flowers and a string quartet. What do you think? Was I right, or did I go too far? Let me know in the comments. And if you want to hear more stories about life's unexpected turns, don't forget to subscribe.